Friends, in today's episode, we are going to talk about career options for engineers and the popular career options which are there. The most popular is going for MBA after doing BE BTech. Now, in today's episode, we are going to talk about some plus points and some minus points of this option so as to enlighten people and so that they take an informed decision before going there. Because in engineering, while doing engineering or while studying, any students feel that if they get a job, that's end of all their woes, that's end of all the problems. But believe me, getting a job or getting married is never the end of problem. It is a new beginning always. So they have to have an idea of what lies beyond getting the job. Okay. So in today's episode, we are discussing in some detail about how it is like after getting these jobs, and of course how to get there, what to expect. So we'll cover all this in today's talk.
Why do people do MBA after engineering or after 2 to 3 years of experience in the engineering field?
Now, many employers who employ MBAs, they insist that before doing MBA, they should have had a work experience in some factory or in some organization, in some role, because in heart of heart, their employers know that whatever is taught in MBA is not going to be directly useful. So, in order to have some industry orientation and some orientation to the business, it is usually considered mandatory that they do go through some hard grind of industry before actually directly coming to MBA. Unfortunately, in India, we have a notion that education should be KG to PG in one stretch. If there is ever any break, people frown on that. People question why there is a gap. But abroad, sabbaticals are common. Working in between is common. And that suits in a way to develop the personality and to give the actual practical orientation. So a phase of education followed by a phase of employment, it doesn't suit from the practical point of view for making a successful professional. Okay. So a down to earth working level professional has to have a mix of the reality touch and the academics. So from that point of view, this insistence is there and it's very much valid. Apart from that, of course, when boys and girls are writing their exam for their final year in engineering, they are of course too preoccupied with studying a lot of maths and a lot of differential equations and stuff. Yeah. So they are immersed into deep of academics, and at that point in time, they are not able to devote so much time to prepare for entrance for MBA. Now, when they get employed and when they come to a job, they realize that whatever they did in engineering, it need not be remembered, so they can afford to forego it, forget it, and then they start afresh, preparing for these competitive exams while they are working, preparing for their verbal, quant, and general knowledge and whatever is asked in competitive exam. Then they explicitly do preparation for these courses. So whether they are working or not, sometimes it requires 1 or 2 years of preparation to crack those competitions. So some of them take up a job, some of them just do something, or they do nothing also sometimes. Some of them become professors in their own colleges to buy time so that they have access to library and they are able to prepare for these competitive exams. But those who take up the job, of course, depending on the company where they are, for large organization, probably they may get some time to study for the competitive exam. Smaller private organization, of course, will not allow anybody to time and energy enough to prepare for these exams. So that then becomes a trap. Okay. But yes, general rule is that boys and girls do come. They take up a job immediately after engineering, and then as and when they get selected, they move over. typically after 2 or 3 years or 4 years of working.
What do people learn in MBA?
See, these courses were started to give a business orientation because as graduate engineers, they do not learn much of practical life management and how business is done. So these courses, of course, through case studies and through discussions, they expose them to the real working of a business scenario. Okay. So what are the complications, how those complications got resolved, how they got aggravated. So there are case studies. So mostly it is driven through case studies. Of course, there is some theory content related to maybe operation side or some specific of marketing and theories of that. But apart from that, the theory is actually relatively less significant. What is more significant are the group discussions and whatever guest lectures they have, which expose them to the industrial reality. Okay. And some plus points are there definitely of this one. They learn how to talk. They learn how to glib talk. So they become good communicator. They are able to make good presentations, most of them. Okay. And they know how to use data. Okay. They do get some idea of magnitudes. Because if you take a fresh engineering graduate and you just ask him some questions, for example, how much your state transport must be spending in running buses every day. Now, usually we are never exposed to these kind of facts and figures when we do graduation in engineering. Okay. Or suppose some factory is there, some building is there. At a glance, if somebody asks how much money must have been spent in building this factory, or how much could be its working capital requirement or turnover. Now, these kind of magnitudes, they do get an idea after they do MBA. They start knowing the difference, let's say between 10,000 crore and 8,000 crore. What is the difference in what it can deliver? Okay. So that is certainly a plus point, and that is required also for the business. Okay. Plus some other skills like what should be the right cost, how to negotiate. And those are some of the things which are, of course, they get covered during the course of this education. Okay. What are the best practices in industry, for example? How recruitments are done, how training is done, for example. All these kind of HR nuances, they are taught. Market nuances are taught. How does market behave? How to predict market? How to forecast market? How to develop market? How to sustain market? How to strive to have a leadership position in the market? Okay. So all these things do come, though not directly, indirectly. Uh, Actually, what happens is that the curriculum, if you see for any MBA courses, whether it is roadside institute or it is top institute of the country, the syllabus is more or less same. The syllabus does not differ much. Now, what differs is the quality of discussion, the quality of interactions with the classmates and with the faculty, the quality of the faculty, the quality of guest faculty. So that is what makes all the difference. Another plus point which it brings in is that they know how to connect with people. So it does improve networking, which is the value add, because networking is what is really useful in the life afterwards. Because the class fellows who would be doing MBA in the same class will be in all in big positions after some years down the line. So anybody who knows all those fellows would have certainly an advantage. Okay. And when organizations hire MBAs, they look for those advantages. Not what is taught in the MBA course, but they look for the connectivity part. They look for the influence sphere part of how many people you know, who you can influence, who would help you in case you require help for the organization or for yourself. So those are some of the definite plus points which are there. Actually, what is taught syllabus wise, it is fairly stereotyped, I would say. And most of it is only common sense. Most of it is common sense. If you compare it with engineering, where there are plethora of mathematics, equations, this, that, as compared to that, now these MBA courses are relatively easier to digest. They are interesting. So people can throw themselves on it. So students can really enjoy the MBA courses. It's a good time pass. Of course, they make you slog. You have to work hard. They keep you busy because students have to become habitual to slogging. So the courses are designed in such a way so that they don't let you rest in peace. There is so much of packed with programs that students have to be on their toes all the time and they have to burn midnight oil. They make sure that it happens. But otherwise, the content is relatively easy to digest and people enjoy doing it. And it does develop personality. It does develop personality and communication skill. And people start thinking more objectively. All these are the plus points.
How do they learn in MBA?
Most of the learning is happens through group discussions and case studies, industry case studies. But of course, many times those stories are hackneyed. Those are not the realistic things. Actually, what they present is something else, and what happens, what was the actual root cause of the problem was something else. So sometimes, of course, they are more driven by the professors in which direction they want to take the students. But many times those case studies are far removed from the actual facts. Okay. The actual fact, the actual success factor is different from what is discussed in case studies. Okay. But yes, case studies, group discussions, seminars, talks, role play. Hmm? Role plays are also done in typical development centers where some scenario is created and some team exercises are given so they learn how to work as a team, how to develop team spirit. All those kind of methodologies are there. And then there are something focused on, say, building creativity, for example, and analytical thinking. Now, those are some of the specific lessons or exercises. Usually, in MBA, particularly in HR, there are some templates and some instruments to assess the personality profile and leadership style and those kind of things. Okay. So they go through those tests and then they uh, make out how this testing is done, how that assessment is done, and what means what. Okay. Now that's in a way an indirect way of learning, but then that's what happens in particularly in better institutes. Of course, in roadside institutes, of course, they will just pass the exam, they will go through the grind, they will go through the motions and just pass through the process and come out. But yes, in better institutes, it's a different kind of exposure, and that's what determines the market value of the pass out.
What kind of jobs do they get after completing an MBA, and what kind of emoluments they get?
So I will start the what is the driving factor why boys and girls want to go for MBA. See, a graduate engineer can expect to earn anything ranging from say 2.5 lakhs per annum to 5 lakhs per annum, 6 lakhs per annum. Usually that is the range in which graduate engineers get paid after they join, take up a job immediately after graduation. If somebody does MBA from top institutes, the package can jump straight away from 15 to 20 lakhs. So where is 3 lakhs to 5 lakhs and versus, say it's a 4 to 5 times jump in emoluments. So that's the major motivating factor why Boys and girls gravitate towards that. Okay. But of course, and this I'm talking is approximate figure. Of course, one can calibrate with the market depending on when the job needs to be evaluated. But then this is for average performer in the class from top institutes. I'm not talking of topper. Topper may be getting much more. They may be getting 1 crore plus also. So, okay, we are not talking of those exceptions. We are talking of average. So, on an average, 15 to 20 lakhs as against 3 lakhs or so in after engineering, 3 to 5 lakhs. Okay. But not everybody is lucky and top institutes are difficult to get into. So, if one goes to, let us say, second line of institutions, which of course there are many again. So, the package may come down to something like 10 to 12 lakhs or maybe 10 to 15 lakhs in that range. But still, it is a substantial jump as compared to graduate engineer. And then there are roadside institutes which have mushroomed all over the place in all big cities. There are several of them. And entrance is pretty easy in those roadside institutes. Anybody can get admission. If you are able to pay their fees, you get admission. The packages to be expected from those institutions are something from 6 to 10 lakhs or so, or 6 to 12 lakhs in that range. Right? So, but there is a finite probability of not getting any job at all. So, that is where the decision has to be taken that whether it makes sense. And there are umpteen cases where graduate engineers do some MBAs from side institutions only to forget MBA and continue with their engineering stream or go to some third stream. So they use neither engineering nor MBA. Now, those kind of examples are also there, right? Like, for example, somebody will go in some insurance company and doing some job where neither is used, probably. Okay. So, those examples are also there. So, this is about the emolument part. And talking to about the other part of the question of what is the nature of job. Now, nature of job varies from industry to industry and specialization to specialization. For example, I know of somebody after doing MBA from top institution, he was hired by a top company. I would not name the company, where he was posted somewhere in deep in Bihar, in rural area, where all he was supposed to do was to go in the fields and count the stacks of the raw material. Okay. Obviously, it was agro based, must have been agro based product. Okay. So, moving in the field and counting the stacks of raw material in the fields, even that was one job profile. If one goes to, of course, sales and marketing, now sales is different, marketing is different, market development is different. In sales, of course, one has to move in the market, interface with the dealers, with the middleman, sometimes bully them, sometimes get bullied by them, okay, to meet the sales targets. So they have to push the target, they have to push their stock and follow up, follow up, and follow up. So those are another kind of sales kind of jobs which are there. Then there are, of course, market development jobs which are more to do with advertising and strategy making of how to grow into a new geographical market location and stuff like that. And nowadays, people say that market has to be cultivated, like agriculture, you have to grow the market. So it requires, of course, another kind of skill set where people have to know from the ground reality, what is the requirement from the market and what if done would sell in the market. And if you have a product, how to create a condition so that market will lap up those products. Advertising in one part of it, of course, there are other strategic parts of how to communicate, how to talk, how to build the requirement, how to build case, how to help the customer to justify to their management why they should buy a certain product. And in case of B2B, okay. But there are differences. Like even in marketing, rural marketing is a different sector where one has to learn to deal with panchayats and down to earth people. And urban technical marketing is different. FMCG is different. Technical marketing is of course closer to engineering, where you have to talk something technical to some technical people. Okay. Selling software solutions come somewhere in that league of selling technology. So one has to be tech savvy, one has to know how to communicate, how to convince somebody of technology, how to understand their problem, how to customize the solutions for them. And all that goes into market development. Okay. And then there is, of course, a big field of HR. Now, in HR, of course, again, there are fields like talent management is one who look after the training. Recruitment is there, of course, recruitment plus training. Then there are establishment people who just keep track of establishment, employees, payroll, and all that kind of stuff. And then there are IR people who deal with labor issues, unions, and so on, litigations related to labor issues and stuff like that. Now, these are some of the different profiles which one goes. Nowadays, of course, there is a trend that many MBAs are going for consultancy kind of a job. There are big consultancy companies, all of them know those names. So they are big recruiters of MBAs. So they join those consultant companies and they start doing some consultancy for their clientele. Okay. Which is relatively more probably satisfying and academically challenging job to do some consultancy. Otherwise, many of jobs may turn out to be very routine. And so in consultancy, of course, you get to see variety of industries, variety of problems, and you solve problems related to say productivity or technology assimilation. Or there are wide variety of issues which they know how to deal with them, which is of course satisfying and gives a big exposure. It gives a helicopter view of the business, how it is done. Getting a helicopter view of business is one big plus point from MBA. Otherwise, you join some company at some lower level, you are a small cog in a big wheel. You know only your immediate environment and nothing beyond. So, MBA courses do present an opportunity to know the overall picture, the bigger picture. Okay. So, that is one plus point.
How does packages for MBA qualified professionals scale up rapidly?
Well, actually, there are set standards in industries that when they join, let us say, as executive or senior executive position. It's called as executive or senior executive position. Then they probably become manager or assistant manager or deputy manager or senior manager. And after that, of course, they become AGM, DGM, general manager, and then vice president and director. And that is the hierarchy. Now, MBA is a faster moving stream because it is not a very specialized course. So, for example, marketing is marketing. So somebody who's marketing one thing can start marketing something totally different tomorrow. If of course it remains the same segment of market, like if it is urban or rural, that divide will be there. But then Within urban market, you can move from company to company. In software marketing, you can start swapping companies after companies, and the nature of job does not change. But with every jump, you get some rise. Okay. So that sets the dynamics of the total scenario. So heads keep rolling like that. Okay. So if you are in the stream where heads are already rolling at certain rate, you also flow with that rate automatically. And in order to retain you, the company has to give you a matching perk as what somebody would get by jumping. So that sets the tone and standard. So let us say your salary keeps on increasing by some percentage after every 2 3 years, and you keep getting promoted at regular intervals like that. If you just be there and flow with the system. To flow with the system, you don't have to be exceptional performer. Of course, you cannot be extra bad also. You have to be average. If you are average, you move at average rate, and that average rate is pretty much better than graduate engineers. So the salary rises much faster. And because the turnover is more, people keep leaving. Now it is common to see that at relatively young age, people attain very senior positions. Because when they join, they may have a tile hierarchy above them. But then that people move so fast that in next 10 years, they find that there's hardly anybody left above. Okay. So there is a lot of room to grow. So that gives opportunity, that gives rise in emoluments, that also develops personality, of course. One has to expand himself to sit in a bigger chair. Okay. So, but that bigger chair is available. For graduate engineers, what happens is the other way. You have some chair. By your performance, you have to grow too big for that chair so that somebody gives you a bigger chair. But in MBAs, the bigger chair becomes available. So you have to expand to fill that bigger chair. So that difference is there. So, but having said that, there is always a glass ceiling. Up to what level one can rise like this? See, when you are in a flow and there are a lot of people flowing with you, nobody may notice you individually. And you just flow with the stream and your salary will keep on growing. At the average rate as all others are getting, you will also get. Right? But soon comes a situation that you start becoming more of an individual player, and you are noticed as individual performer. And then the management may realize that whatever this fellow is doing for so much salary, anybody would do it for half of this salary also equally well. So that is where the problem comes, because there is not so much of specialization. Manager is a manager is a manager. Any manager can substitute any other manager, right? It's a modular kind of a thing. So that is a threat. That after the management realizes that you are not worth the package that you are getting, and are of course pressures, financial pressures to the company. So they will always find such ways of reducing their wage bill, of substituting a higher earner with somebody who is at lower emolument level and who can deliver the same thing. And they also learn by that time that, okay, whatever you are able to do, somebody else will also do equally well. So that is where the problem starts coming. So a faster moving career always leads to midlife blues. When you are in your 40s, you start hitting the glass ceiling, and then there is all probability that one can get thrown out of the glass ceiling. Okay. So this is what happens. A slow and steady riser will hit the glass ceiling when he is nearing retirement. So he can retire gracefully. But if you rise too fast, that is what happens. You hit the glass ceiling and then out you go into nowhere. The flip side is that when boys and girls start flowing and their salary keeps growing at regular intervals, they start assuming that their salary will keep on rising at the same rate throughout their career. So they book swanky houses, flats, they buy big cars, they squander all the money in traveling, going abroad just for sightseeing. So they blow up all their money, assuming that the money will keep coming at that rate. And when they hit the glass ceiling, it comes as a big jolt suddenly out of the blues. And then they suddenly realize that their EMIs are still ticking, their responsibilities are not over by any means, their kids are still school going, so they need to earn. And then, since they have been at the top of organization, they can't join some other organization at mid level again. Even if they want, nobody will take them because it's a streamlined flow. So you have to fit into their system, and their system meaning certain age profile for each level. So if you are 40 plus, you are above general manager. So a 40 plus person will not be taken as a senior manager. It doesn't happen. So that is where the problem comes. So then majority of such people end up becoming freelance consultants and stuff like that because that's all they get to do.
How do you get into good MBA colleges?
Of course, for getting good MBA colleges, there is a competitive exam, pan India, and it is difficult because those competitive exams are designed to reject the maximum number of aspirants. So the question papers are deliberately made so difficult that nobody can confidently crack it all. Okay. And they ask things which are difficult to learn. Okay. For example, they will ask verbal quant, they will make you mug up a dictionary, they will make you solve 100 problems in 1 hour. Okay. Quick mathematics kind of a thing. Then esoteric general knowledge, ask anything from like Quizmaster, ask something, some esoteric data. Now, only purpose these exams serve is to reject conclusively. But suppose those who qualify, those who get selected, are these skill sets which they have developed for cracking the exam useful in their career subsequently? No, they are not. They are nowhere near useful, as a matter of fact. So it is only to beat the competition, you have to do this. And after that, you can forget all about all those competitive exams and whatever you learned for that. Okay. Unfortunately, that is what it is. And after getting, of course, selected, since many institutions also insist that you have a work experience, you have to join somewhere and prepare for these exams. The problem is, let us assume that a graduate engineer passes out at 22, 23 years age. If he or she has to work for 3, 4 years in a company, he or she becomes 25, 26 years old, at least. Okay. By the time he or she gets admitted to MBA, and let us set aside 2 years for doing MBA. After that, he or she has to get a job. So another couple of years go in settling in the job. So by the time an MBA grad is ready to marry, he or she is already 28 or 30 plus. Okay. So that is a phenomena. One fallout of doing these courses is that you are forced to marry very late. And if that happens, when will you have kids? See, career is not the only chapter in the life, the book of life, so to say. In the same one life, you have to be a student, you have to be, you have to make your career, but you have to also be a father, a grandfather. So, what happens to other later chapters? So, basically, by marrying late, you are eating into the time slot of your next generation. Because your parents would have married earlier, so you had that luxury that you got these 10 years, say from 22 to 32, to play around. Okay. But if you marry late, your children would still be unemployed by the time you retire. Then the next gen candidate will have no choice to jiggle around and try various options in the career. He or she will be forced to jump at whatever opportunities they get at that time. And then they have to marry soon because they can't delay it again. They are already quite old. So all that chakkar comes. So basically, by doing this, you are eating into the time zone of your next gen, which is not a very desirable thing, according to me.
How do you get into colleges abroad to complete an MBA?
For abroad, also, there are competitive exams like GMAT, for example, for US, and they are equally difficult, but not as difficult as getting into IIMs, for example, because that kind of cutthroat competition and difficulty created just to beat competition happens only in India. In rest of the world, things are not, because there is not so much of population. So generally, whosoever wants to get admission find it relatively easier to get admission, provided he or she is able to pay the money for the fees. Okay. So there the situation is not so fiercely competitive. One does get admission. The problem is that in, say, engineering post graduation, for example, MS, it is easy to get some financial assistantship when you seek admission abroad, some teaching assistantship or research assistantship. So one doesn't have to spend father's hard earned money. You can expect to get some monetary support once you are there, some part-time job, some kind of scholarship or something. But now these things are unheard of in management courses. So in management courses, it may pretty much cost close to 1 CR or above. Okay. Now that kind of funds you have to spend. Now one has to evaluate the ROI. Of course, one can take loan from the bank. Even for MBA in India, the fees is quite exorbitant nowadays. So one may have to take loan from banks. Banks will give loan, of course, but you have to pay the installments. So basically, what happens is that whatever more emoluments you get after MBA, for good 5 years, actually they go in paying the loan. Okay. So one has to again evaluate the ROI critically, that when actually you start earning more after doing MBA. If for 5 years you are paying to the bank, and if the amount is close to 1 CR, like one is going abroad, then whatever emoluments he or she would get, if you subtract that bank loan installment, what do you get in real terms, first of all? Secondly, what happens that certain fields, for example, finance, the practices there are different. So a chartered accountant in India is different from CFA. So an Indian degree does not help you to work in US and vice versa. A CFA cannot work as CA in India. Okay. So those factors also one has to consider. Actually, when one goes abroad for doing MBA or for any job for that matter, any kind of courses, it makes sense to stay there and take up a job there. Because if somebody comes back, the Indian companies would recognize that MBA done from abroad at best as equivalent to Indian MBA. So they will pay you at par with an Indian MBA, not more, because their dynamics of the heads rolling is such that they can only pay you that much. So you may have spent 1 crore rupees in doing MBA, but they don't care. Why should they care about it? They will see their own dynamics and accordingly they will adjust you somewhere. So you find that you are compared to an Indian MBA. Okay. Then what is the big idea in going there? Another thing happens is that in many countries in Western world, for getting visa, for say working visa, for example, or a green card, it is much easier for a technocrat to get a visa. But a general management guy is not on their preference list. A medico may be on their preference list. A doctor may be on their preference list. A teacher may be on their preference list. And a technical person is on their preference list. But not a sales manager, not a HR manager. No. So they find difficult to get visa. They find difficult to stay on abroad after doing their degree. So they are forced to come back. And when they do come back again, their imported degree is equivalent to Indian degree. So the advantage goes out. Unless it is from some very top university, like Carnegie Mellon or some big name which is revered. For average universities, no, the Indian industry will recognize it as equivalent to Indian MBA only.
How effective are these MBA professionals in real life work environments after graduating?
They can float on the top. The problem is they are trained to have the helicopter view. But in big organizations, they are not recruited at that level upfront that they can start viewing everything from the top view. So they will still be in some tall hierarchy, in some lower position. Okay. So their helicopter view will not help there to start with. Secondly, see, anybody who's having helicopter view cannot change the ground reality. So helicopter view looks bewitching from the top, but you don't get to know the problems which are there on the ground. Okay. So they find themselves ill-equipped to deal with those kind of day-to-day problems, the real problems which are troubling the industry. Right. So, like it is said that there are three kind of leaders. There are leaders who can drive the change. There are leaders who can only watch the change. And there are leaders who wonder about the change. Right. So they can sit on top, let us say in general manager's cabin. They can manage, they can float there, but they cannot change much what is happening. So it's like you are riding an elephant, but elephant is not in your control. So many times it gives a feeling of helplessness. And all that HR talk is there about how to groom talent in a good manager and how to rate a good manager. But all that apart, the fact of life is that a successful manager in one scenario in one company may be utter failure in another scenario in another company. So there is nothing like a universally successful, universally good manager. That kind of thing does not happen practically, because success comes because of many reasons. Some are above board, some are below, like iceberg. And in the case studies, what is discussed is only tip of iceberg, not what is under the level. Okay. So you have to be on ground to deal with those kind of things, and they find it difficult often to perform in that kind of situation. So usually they keep switching jobs before it is too late. I can narrate one short story, okay, to establish what I am talking. There was one senior person, a general manager kind of a person, a CEO, who was thrown out of the job, and he was substituted by a person who was junior and who was transferred from somewhere. Okay. So before that person went away, they had a meeting, the last meeting, handover meeting, you can say. So the new incumbent asked the older boss that, boss, you have worked and survived in this organization, in this situation for so many years. You give me some tips as to how to survive at this place. Because I know all that riffraff that yes, I am qualified and all, but I know ground realities are different. And since you know the ground realities, you tell me how to survive here. Now the outgoing person said, why are you asking me? Yeah, I have been thrown out. So I'm not a best example for you. The new incumbent said, boss, I know. But still, I want to ask you because I know that after all, you have survived here for more than 2 decades and all. So you would know much better. So the outgoing person said, okay, I will give you three advices in three envelopes, marked 1, 2, and 3. Okay. You open these envelopes in that sequence only. Whenever you are in deep trouble, for the first time, you open envelope number 1. Next time, when you are in deep trouble, my second advice, you take an envelope number 2. And finally, you take an envelope number 3 advice. So the person said, okay, fine. Now he gave those 3 envelopes and walked off. The new boss, after all, he was a smart manager, so he started functioning. And 1 year passed by, and then there was a performance review meeting. And performance was, of course, nowhere near what was desired. So the fellow got nervous how to face the board. The performance is nowhere near what he had agreed or what was told to him. So he got jittery of how I will face the board. So he opened the first envelope. And first envelope said, it had one line written, blame it on me. Okay. So this fellow was smart, so he understood what that advice was. So he went to the board meeting and he blamed on his predecessor about all the failures. He said, I have just joined. It will take me some time to correct the wrongdoings of my predecessor. And still it is a fallout of what he had done. So he could survive that meeting after that. So, okay, that year went by. Now, next year, again, similar situation came. The performance had further plummeted down, and he did not know what to say now. He has already blamed his predecessor, and he has been given 2 year time by now. So now, if situation does not improve, of course, he has to take the brunt. Then he opened the second envelope. In second envelope, there was one line written, we are on right track. We have had mixed results, but we are heading for a bright future. So he understood what he is supposed to say. So in board meeting, he vehemently claimed that we are on the right track, and he established how they were on right track. And he said, future is bright, and things are happening. There is a mixed, some early results have started coming. So that was his stand, and he survived that board meeting also. Now, third year was further deteriorated scenario. The results were nowhere near what was expected. It had further deteriorated, and he did not know how to face the board now. So he took out the third envelope. The third envelope said one line, "Oh my God, you are still there. You should have left long back." So this is what is seen happening also. People change job like industrial butterflies. They come, they give very tall promises, they make it seem that many things are being done, but one fine day they fly away, leaving things as they were or worse than what they were. Yeah. So this is a phenomena not uncommon to see in business and industry.